You know the scene, right? A lonely road, one single tree, and two guys waiting and waiting for someone who never shows up. For ages, Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot has been seen as the ultimate play about, well, nothing, about meaninglessness. But what if I told you we've been looking at it all wrong? Today, we're going to see how an ancient text can crack open one of modern literature's greatest puzzles and show us something completely new inside.
Four little words. This phrase, which ends both acts of the play, is like the ghost that haunts the whole thing. It's become this huge symbol of total paralysis. But here's what we're going to do today. We're going to challenge the idea that this paralysis is just something that happens to them. We're going to suggest that it's something else, something they choose. So let's all get on the same page. This is pretty much the standard take on Waiting for Godot. It's considered the masterpiece of the theater of the absurd, this perfect reflection of that classic Western dread, the feeling of being in a world that just doesn't have any answers for you. So that's our starting point, the classic reading. Okay, let's step inside the theater of the absurd. The scene couldn't be simpler. You've got two tramps, Vladimir and Estragon, on this totally desolate road. And their entire existence, their whole world, just revolves around one single repetitive thing, waiting for this guy named Godot. He's supposed to have all the answers, right? He's going to give them purpose, but he never, ever shows up.
And you can totally see why the traditional reading stuck. It's built on these heavy-hitting philosophers like Camus and Sartre, whose whole thing was about an indifferent universe that really doesn't care about us. And I mean, the play fits perfectly. The dialogue just goes in circles, everything they try to do fails, even trying to hang themselves, and they're just completely, utterly stuck. It's a really powerful vision of human helplessness.
But here's where we throw a wrench in the works. This all leads to a really critical question. What if the play isn't about how broken the world is, but is actually a diagnosis of a spiritual problem? What if the real source of all their suffering isn't coming from the outside, but from within? And that single question, well, it changes everything.
To really explore that question, we're going to turn to a totally different playbook. We're talking about the Indian knowledge system, and specifically the philosophy found in the ancient Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita. Now, I know, that sounds like a crazy pairing, right? Beckett and the Gita, but you've got to stick with me here. Because its ideas about action, time, and illusion, they unlock a new interpretation that is just startlingly relevant.
This really gets right to the heart of the matter. See, Western existentialism basically says that despair is a totally rational response to a cosmos that couldn't care less about you. The Gita, on the other hand, says, hold on a minute. It frames despair as an internal state, a psychological confusion that can actually be cleared up with wisdom and the right kind of action. So the problem isn't the world, it's the way we're looking at it.
And you can see this difference so clearly when you look at these two examples of despair. In the Gita, the warrior Arjuna has a complete and total breakdown right on the battlefield. But for him, that crisis is a catalyst. It's the starting point for this profound spiritual teaching. Now, for Vladimir and Estragon, their crisis is just permanent. It's their normal. They never move past it because they never really seek a way out.
So with that foundation in place, we're going to deconstruct the tramp's paralysis using three big ideas from the Gita. And this is where all those familiar parts of the play are going to start to look completely different.
First up is a concept called nishkama karma. This is a huge one. It basically means that you should act because it's your duty, because it's the right thing to do, not because you're obsessed with what you're going to get out of it. The action itself is the point, not the prize at the finish line.
And our two tramps, they are the poster children for the exact opposite of that. Their entire existence is defined by their attachment to one single result, Godot showing up. They're not waiting out of some deep sense of purpose. They're waiting because they expect a cosmic payday to come and fix everything. And here's the real kicker. From the Gita's perspective, their waiting isn't really an action. It's the abandonment of action. Because their motivation is completely tied to some future reward, they are just spiritually stuck. They're incapable of doing anything meaningful in the here and now. That's why they can say, let's go, and then they don't move.
Okay, so that's action. Now let's talk about time. In the Gita, time, or kala, isn't a straight line. It's a repeating cycle. And if you don't achieve some kind of spiritual insight, you get trapped in what's called samsara. Think of it like being stuck on a hamster wheel of suffering, doomed to repeat the same patterns again and again and again.
Does that sound familiar? The entire structure of Waiting for Godot is basically Samsara in play form. Act 2 is almost a carbon copy of Act 1. The messenger shows up with the same old news,
the promise gets kicked down the road to tomorrow, and the whole cycle just starts all over again. They are literally trapped in a loop because nothing in their heads ever changes.
So this brings us to the biggest mystery of them all, Godot himself. I mean, people have guessed he's God, or meaning, or even death. But what if we look at it from a completely different angle? What if Godot isn't a who, but a what?
Through this lens, Godot isn't an external person at all. He's a psychological condition. He represents Asha, which is this kind of misplaced, desperate hope, and Maya, which is the grand delusion that keeps us from seeing what's real. Godot is just the name they've given to their own delusion. So here's the crucial point, the real tragedy of the play from this perspective. Their obsession with getting rescued from the outside makes it impossible for them to ever look inside. The Gita teaches that real truth is found by recognizing the eternal self, the Atman, that's already within all of us. But Vladimir and Estragon, they're just perpetually staring down that empty road, waiting for someone else to come and save them.
So, what does this all add up to? Let's bring all these ideas together and see what powerful, final picture this new interpretation really creates. I mean, look at this. When you lay it all out, it's actually kind of shocking how neatly every major theme in the play maps right onto a core concept from the Gita. You've got karma, but it's totally fruitless. Nishkama karma, or selfless action, is completely missing. Their belief in Godot is a perfect example of Maya, or illusion. The whole play is structured like kala, cyclical time, and even their talk about escaping, about moksha, is completely misunderstood and goes nowhere.
And this is the profound shift. Suddenly, the play is no longer about two poor, helpless guys in a cruel, indifferent universe. It becomes a tragedy about two men who are trapped by their own spiritual ignorance. Their absurdity isn't some condition of the cosmos, it's a self-inflicted wound caused by their own attachments and their completely misdirected search for meaning.
Ultimately, it all boils down to this one powerful idea. Vladimir and Estragon are waiting for meaning to be delivered to them, like a pizza. But the wisdom of the Gita suggests that's just not how it works. Meaning isn't something you get from the outside. It's something you have to awaken to from within. And so this whole rereading leaves us with a powerful and maybe even a slightly uncomfortable final thought. The play shows us that this endless, agonizing wait isn't some inescapable destiny. It's a choice that gets repeated day after day. And that turns the question away from the stage and points it directly back at us.